John Mayhew.
Thank you for calling in. I congratulate the member of Bath for securing this debate, which, as a number of speakers have already said, affects politicians of whatever colour right across the country. Now, I am lucky enough to represent a Norfolk seat, so my constituency of Broadland is also served by the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital, to a slightly lesser extent by the James Paget, and also to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. All three of those hospitals have been mentioned already in this debate. Now, the problems for ambulance waiting times are multifaceted and have been well rehearsed by a number of other speakers today. So I'm not going to go through all of them and rehearse those. I'm just going to focus on one area, and that's on the hospital handover delays. We have a national standard, which is that handover should take place no longer than 15 minutes. And nationally, 60% of all handovers fail to meet that standard. But I'm just going to focus on the Norfolk and Norwich and the most recent statistics, which is that in June, the average handover time was not 15 minutes or less, but in fact 57 minutes, almost an hour. And so you think, well, when you're looking at ambulance times, surely it's the front door of the hospital that's the problem, getting people into the A&E. But when you talk to the leadership of the Norfolk and Norwich, as I have done, they tell me that it's not the front door of the hospital that's the problem, it is overwhelmingly the back door, by which I mean people leaving the hospital, those who are medically fit to be discharged, and then not having appropriate spaces in which to intermediate or care spaces for them to be discharged into, or not having the care packages agreed and in place. And that's the bit which I think we should be focusing on more than all the other very important aspects. Because if you look at the data, in April of this year, across the nation, there were 20,155 people who were medically fit for discharge who were still retained in hospital beds. Now, I learnt during the course of the COVID pandemic that we have about 100,000 beds in the NHS. So if over 20,000 of those beds are bed blocked, which is a deeply unfair term because it somehow implies that the people in the beds are refusing to leave. That's, of course, nothing could be further from the truth. But if fully a fifth of our beds in hospitals are retained out of use when there is no medical reason for that to happen, then that is absolutely crucial to solving this problem. Because if we can move those 20,000, one-fifth, how many extra hospitals is that we've built? I mean, it's enormous. It's an enormous change. So we need to look at why it is that medically fit patients are not being discharged. And a key reason in my submission, Mr. Chairman, is one of the disparity of funding and where funding comes from NHS beds and the move to care. Because we all know in this room that one is funded by the NHS and the other one is funded by county councils. And there is an unedifying dispute often as to who should pick up the bill and how you transfer responsibility of a patient. So there is no such thing as continuity of care in that discharge process. And if we can do one thing radically to improve not just ambulance times, but the service which is provided in our hospitals more generally, and the burnout that honourable members have been describing, and the pressures on staff and the numbers of staff required, then it is to solve the problem of the continuity of care between the back door of a hospital and the front door of intermediate care and care in the community. And so my question to the Minister is this: am I wrong in that basic analysis? And if I am, perhaps the Minister could tell me where I've gone wrong. And if I'm right, or even substantially right, perhaps I'd be very grateful if the Minister could set out his views on how we can take this bold step from the siloed funding and responsibility that we currently have between the NHS and secondary care, and how we can transition to what we desperately need, which is a continuity of care for the patient, and thereby solving all these other problems that we have been discussing today.